Hey guys, welcome back to another video in the r/EntitledPeople subreddit. I have 3 Entitled People stories for you today. The first involving a spoiled woman that yells at her 60-year-old father for spending his own money, i.e. her inheritance. The second story is about a sexist man complaining about a baby changing table being in the men's washroom. And the third story involves a greedy person who owns a house but takes away a free hotel room and meal from a homeless person because they wanted a change of scenery. Yikes. But without further ado, let's jump into the stories, shall we? Entitled sister-in-law is angry that her father is spending her inheritance. 2 years ago, I got married to a wonderful and intelligent woman. She's a surgeon. Her father is a very successful artist. He's done well and earns a great deal of money. In addition to my wife, the oldest, he has 3 sons, Larry, Mo, and Curly, and a daughter, sister-in-law, the youngest. My father-in-law, Phil, is in his mid-60s, still going strong and enjoys his work and doesn't want to stop for another 5 to 6 years. He has enough put away that he could live comfortably the rest of his life. My sister-in-law is the youngest at 22 and in university as a pre-law student. Her father pays for everything: tuition, books, an apartment, car, fuel, a food allowance, etc. The two of them fight constantly. Phil is divorced. Both parties were having affairs from sister-in-law's mother. Phil has an older brother, Jeff, who was the consummate bachelor. Well, Jeff's finally decided at the age of 67 to settle down and tie the knot. They're having the ceremony in a stave church in Norway, where their family heritage dates back to. But when Phil announced that he was going to fly out to his only brother's wedding, sister-in-law lost it. She started yelling that he was spending her inheritance, and it was wrong. She launched into this huge tirade about how he went to Canada, New York, etc. Half the trips were business related. She then tried to convince her 3 brothers and my wife to back her, and that he needs to not go to save her inheritance. She actually, I kid you not, said, "You're spending my money," then threw a small tantrum when nobody would back her. My wife took her into the other room and sternly explained that the money belonged to Phil and none of them had any right to it. She seemed to calm down and came up with a compromise. He could take her too, and they could spend a couple weeks in Norway. This started an even bigger argument as Curly thought it was a great idea and he could go too. Larry, Mo, and my wife tried to point out that due to the church size and remoteness, only Phil was invited. Everything ended when sister-in-law drove off crying because we were being mean to her and her father was going to make her poor. Geesh, what a selfish, horrible, entitled young woman. But you know, I want to be mad at her, but it's so clear that the father enables her by paying for literally everything she wants. And that's not how a situation like this should be handled. And as long as her father keeps handling her like this, entitled sis will unfortunately always be like this. Sir, you're not obligated to use the baby changing table. I work at a local sub shop in my town. Technically it's a chain store, but the only locations right now are in my state, so it has a mom and pop vibe. The one I work at is pretty hard to get to from the main drag. You sort of have to weave through a neighborhood and the community college's parking lot, so only locals ever really come in. For some reason last night though, some random guy came in. He had a thick Texas accent and held a lot of pride in letting us know that he was from the Supreme State. He unironically called it that. He ordered his sandwich and headed into the bathroom. Where I work, we have single stall bathrooms, the kind where you walk in and the toilet and sink are next to each other and you have to lock the door behind yourself. Well, in both the women's and men's bathroom, there's a baby changing table, one of those big gray ones with the cartoon koala on the front. It folds down and has a little buckle. We have one in each bathroom because, well, single fathers exist. The resulting conversation goes as follows. "Hey kid." "Yes sir?" "Why is there one of them women's things in the men's bathroom?" Pardon me? One of them girly tables for the babies. You have one in the men bathroom. Oh, the changing table. Yes, sir. We have one in both bathrooms. Well, why is that? So that men can change their baby's diaper if they need to. Well, that's the wife's job. Why are you promoting men to be like women? What the F? Sometimes single fathers come in, or it'll just be a dad and his kids. It's just there for convenience. It makes me feel like a woman. I don't need it in the men's bathroom. Oh, okay. Well, I don't need to use it. Sir, you're not obligated to use the baby changing table. He just stared at me with his mouth hanging open before shaking his head, sighing and saying to himself, I can't believe these damn kids. He wasn't wearing a mask either, which is why I could see his mouth hanging open. He had it on, but it was all bunched up under his chin, covering nothing important. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. I sure hope this man doesn't have any children and never has children. The last thing we need is more men with this sort of chauvinistic attitude. Like, talk about being insecure. I don't want that baby table in there because it might get some femininity on me. But with that charm, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that he hasn't had anything remotely feminine on him for quite some time, if you know what I mean. I have a house, but I'm entitled to free stuff being given to the homeless. I work at a place that assists the homeless with places to stay when the weather is cold. I've met some people who truly were in the wrong place at the wrong time and are trying to get their lives back together. I've met people who are kind of a-holes, but being an a-hole doesn't mean you should have to sleep in the cold. Then there's the type of person that we help that I can't stand. We'll call them the tourists. There's a medium-sized group of people who aren't homeless, but take advantage of the program on cold nights anyways, because they want to stay in a hotel for a few nights instead of their houses. There's no way to stop this program for them without hurting the people who actually need it, so it slips by. Anyway, recently in my area there was a severe snowstorm which knocked the power out for about half the town, hotels included. People started pouring out of their rooms to complain, as if staff could do anything about the power outage. Then some people started to gather extra blankets and planned to board up the rooms and seal under the doors to stay warm for as long as possible. Then came the tourists. One of the desk clerks asked one of them where he was going to go, since being out on the street would be far worse than a room without electricity. The tourist said, "I'm not actually homeless, I just come here for a change of scenery." When I heard that, my blood boiled. There are actual homeless people struggling to stay warm, and tourists are taking the shelter and food that could help them make it through the winter. So many people get turned away because there are no rooms left to give after the third cold day in a row. But tourists are the first in line on day one to grab their free room and meals. How do people end up like this? How do you live with yourself knowing you're taking things away from people who are actually in need? It's the same thing with people that panhandle for a living, or can afford groceries but go to the food bank for free stuff. Like, when people like this exist, how do you know if someone actually needs help? Greedy people always ruin things for everyone else for personal gain, and it's just so sad. People like this need to be charged with fraud. And I really hope that now that they've exposed themselves to OP, they're blocked from receiving future services. So crazy. But anyways, that is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed those 3 entitled people stories. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I truly appreciate when you do, and I will see you in the next Reddit stories. Bye!